The Abuja School of Social and Political Thoughts has advised the Independent National Electoral Commission to ensure that political parties do not submit names of duly elected candidates in the just concluded primaries with people that did not participate in the process. It also tasked the electoral body to ensure that its actions are guided by the Electoral Act to avoid external manipulations by anti-democratic elements. The group's position came on the heels of the controversy surrounding the submission of the name of the President of the Senate, Dr. Ahmed Lawan, and the former Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Godswill Akpabio, which appeared on INEC portals as senatorial candidates of the party when they were said not to have participated in the elections that produced the party's candidates. Joining us to discuss this subject are Dr. Sam Amadi, the director of Abuja School of Social and Political Thoughts, and Sam Onuigbo, who won the APC Senatorial ticket for Abia Central, but incidentally substituted with another person who did not participate in the senatorial primary election. Good to have you on Newsday this afternoon. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Sam Amadi, first I want to direct this question to you. With the situation on hand, seeing as the names were substituted, what burden of responsibility does INEC have to clear up this situation and expediently?
Thank you very much. And let me start by saying that I'm surprised that this morning on the morning show, the INEC Director of Information or Commissioner General of Information came out to say that INEC's responsibility is to wait until people go to court and then INEC would provide evidence. That's totally in flagrant violation, or in fact distorting the electoral law. In the past, part of the crisis of the elections in Nigeria is that INEC had been, either by itself or by wrong interpretation of the law or by legislative error, being crippled from taking action as an effective regulator. So we saw instances where several manipulations and INEC would not act because INEC would wait for people to go to court, and then we have now judicialized politics to the point that there's a crisis of legal opinion about the courts. And so the new Electoral Act clearly sorted out those problems and says, look, INEC, as every regulator, I used to be a regulator for 5 years of electricity regulator, every regulator's primary work is to make a determination about rightness of filings of actions. So anybody who doesn't like what the regulator did will be the one who will now go to court to challenge the regulator, not the regulator waiting and not doing anything and allowing people to now go to court. So the law now says, look, INEC, you are in charge. All the whole of Section 84, particularly Section 84.13 and Section 84.1, is to the intent that INEC will now take process, look at all filings, and decide whether people have violated the act and take a decision. Now, in this case, where INEC sent observers, pursuant to Section 84.1, to go and observe elections, and those observers report on who won and who didn't win. The essence of INEC, the law saying INEC no Congress should happen before you give INEC 14 days or 21 days notice. The idea is simple, so that INEC prepares and sends monitors who bring back a result and say, in this election, validly conducted, XYZ won. Now, what that means, therefore, is if a party, because INEC is not the custodian of the right of members of the party. That's why the Electoral Act says every primary must be democratically, every person must be democratically elected. INEC now is a custodian, protector of the right of party members to have justice at the first level. So if there's a wrong entry, it's INEC's responsibility, now recognized by the Electoral Act and the Constitution, to correct that error. And so what INEC should do is to say, no, this filing is wrong. INEC will now publish the right file and said it is Mr. X who won the primary and therefore ought to be entered as a candidate. If the party feels that INEC are aggrieved by that, they cannot go to court. So in this instance, what should happen, and in the instance of Abia, in the instance of the Senate President, is that INEC would correct that wrongful and fraudulent entry, because that's the primary power of a regulator. Then another person can go to court. It's actually preposterous for the INEC Direct Commissioner for Information and for the one of the National Commissioner, Yakubu, so to argue that INEC's job is to keep this document and await the day the court summons INEC. That means INEC is basically like any other agency. We could have abrogated INEC and allowed Ministry of Culture, Ministry of National Planning, or any ministry to monitor results, and when the court requests, they submit it. INEC is a regulator. In fact, the most important regulator. Constitution has guaranteed its independence. So what we are seeing now is a calamity where we worked very hard to have INEC given the power of law to bite and to back and to bite. And INEC commissioners and staff are the ones who are saying we shouldn't back or bite. We should allow flagrant illegality to be committed, and then as a regulator, we'll fold our hand and await when everybody goes to the court and jam-pack the court, and if the court summons us, we now come with evidence. Again, don't forget that in the case of Christopher, for example, the same INEC rec said this is invalid, this is what we did, and INEC says that they stand with where the rec stand. And INEC is saying a different thing, that no, we stand nowhere, we just fold our hand, let them go to court, and we wait for the day we are summoned. So I think that we are seeing a loss of, INEC is building up loss of confidence. The INEC main job is not just to print ballot boxes, take them to ballot. The INEC primary work is to regulate political behavior. And therefore, if INEC is no longer capable of standing up and protecting the Electoral Act and ensuring that the process that it superintended produces the right result, then we will not have confidence for 2015 to 2023. And so I think that the right thing to do right away is for INEC to reject those entries and replace them with the proper entries. Like in the case of Abia Central, the person who won the primary that INEC witnessed and signed off on should be the person who should be on those entries. Any entry that does not reflect that should be taken from INEC as a wrongful entry. And just like the central bank or any regulator will never play dead brain and say that you committed a crime, you did something wrong. That's what happened in previous election where in Imo East or so, where a senator was alleged to have changed his figures under threat of gun against INEC people. INEC pleaded illegal, they can't do nothing. Now the Electoral Act has given INEC the power that this thing shouldn't happen again. The essence of the new Electoral Act is to stop this practice of INEC being emasculated, and then people will manipulate the process and wait for the court. The elector says, INEC, you have the power, act. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, please, let me bring in Mr. Sam Onuigbo, and because you said, quoted Dr. Sam Amadi, that this fraudulent entry shouldn't even be accepted. In your own case, explain to us what really happened, because we're also hearing the fact that, as a matter of fact, the APC in Abia State had actually published the names of those they will send to INEC even before the primaries were conducted.
Well, I know that I participated in the Abia Central Senatorial primary election for APC. And at the end of the day, we were supposed to be 4 aspirants. Myself, Chief Sam Onuigbo, Chief Henry Iko, Senator Nkechi Nwogo, and Chief Kevin Chimawaja. But before the election, Senator Nkechi Nwogo wrote and withdrew from the exercise. Chief Ubaja could not make it. And it was just myself and Chief Henrico who participated in that event. And at the end of the day, I won the primary election. And as an indication of my victory, the electoral officers that came from the party headquarters made their returns to the office of the organizing secretary, which was received on the 6th of June. And I have a copy here. And then subsequently, after the party had finished with the arrangement, they also gave me Form EC9 from INEC. It's an INEC form. for those who were successful. I completed a form and returned to them. They accepted or acknowledged the form on the 14th. But then on the 16th, I discovered that my name was surprisingly, omitted by the body and replaced with someone who did not participate in the primary in anywhere, because we were 9 in Abia that stood for primaries in Abia Central, Abia North, and Abia South. So that is the strange thing that has happened. And like Doctor said, I participated in this process, that is in making this law, from when we had a retreat in Lagos, and the chairman of INEC read his speech and said, we should please look very closely at how primary elections are done, that they are oftentimes weighed down by the legal tussles. He mentioned in his speech that in 2009, they had over 809 cases, pre-election cases arising from primaries, and that we should look at this and find ways around it to really plug those loopholes. And we went to work, working from there, working at the Hilton, because I was a member of the Joint Technical Committee of the National Assembly, where we had 6 honorable members, each from one geopolitical zone, and 6 senators, chaired by Senator Gaya and Honorable Aisha Duku. So we worked on these things, even with Barrister Festus Okoye, who were there. In fact, he earned the name of professor, because these critical issues came up on how to ensure that only those who participated in legitimate primary elections are the ones to emerge as candidates. And that was aimed at actually ending the impunity that oftentimes comes from some party administrators. So I was really shocked to see that a man who participated in the gubernatorial election, in fact, his name appeared in the 2 sections, both the one that Chief Samson Uchechukwu won, and the one that High Chief Ikeche Menike won. In High Chief Ikeche Menike's turn, he came second. In the one of Chief Samson Uche Oga, he came third. So only for his name to appear as the one that replaced me without participating in any primary election. This is bizarre. And this is not the kind of, this is not why we spent days, hours, months working on the Electoral Act 2022. So that's why I am still at a loss about how someone who did not participate in primary election, did not, he was not part of those who bought forms for Senate, did not participate in screening or anything, suddenly appeared on the list. I think this is the height of impunity. And I'll be shocked if INEC actually allows itself to play along with such charade, because what they sought for and got was the powers that are contained in Section 29 of the Electoral Act, Section 84, that's the section that strengthened these provisions. So we'll be shocked if INEC is now saying we are going back to the old order. If we are going back to the old order.
Just a brief moment, allow me to interrupt you. I would like to know if you've sought any clarification from INEC or even from the APC as to how this magic happened.
Well, I have written to the party because, after their meetings, you cannot find them together. I have written to the chairman. I've directed my team to write to the chairman of the party. And I have also written to the chairman of INEC, to say this is the situation. And of course, from what INEC monitored, my name is on the list as a person who was elected. So it is still a little bit of a shock to hear that an INEC official would come to a program and say, oh no. So why did Barrister Festus Okoye, whom we nicknamed Professor then, because of the questions he was asking and the things we wanted to clear up, why did we spend all those hours and all those days? So I've written, and I think it's an opportunity to appeal to the party to know that the right thing should be done. I'm going back to what the chairman of INEC said then, Professor Yakubu, that they do not want to deal with a situation where they have over 809 pre-election cases coming out of primary elections. So I thought we had cleared that with the law that we enacted. But now to hear that, oh, you have to wait and go to court. So why do we have the Electoral Act that's an armed INEC with all the powers?
Well, Dr. Amadi, this question is for you. Seeing as how Mr. Onuigbo is in this situation, really briefly, what do you recommend as the way forward for these aggrieved party members?
Very simple. And there could be many more who probably have not come up. I mean, we're talking about Lawan and maybe we didn't know about Honorable's case, and there could be many more. The solution is very simple. When the REC of Akwa Ibom rightly said, if your name is not on the verified list by INEC, the primary list, you are not a candidate. The same Festus Okoye says he's right. There's only one INEC, and therefore all the officers are right in implementing the law. So what INEC should do is to come out straight. Like he said, Section 8413 is very clear that when any party does not fulfill the conditions set out in the Act, INEC is authorized to discipline and reject that nomination. It's very clear, black and white. And so what should be done? This is not about honorable member with me on the studio. It's about everybody. It's about confidence in the Electoral Act. It's about the 23 election where Nigerians are going to be, it's going to be a competitive election. We want to say an INEC. We have worked hard to get INEC the right law. I chaired one of the committee in the civil society arena for this law. INEC worked very hard, starting from Ways to Kendamani committee, where INEC was very visible, worked very hard at this point. It's really shocking. If INEC now says, we don't want to exercise the power that the law gave us because some of our officials are probably entangled or compromised, I think the chairman should come out swinging and say, look, this is in our portal. The reason why INEC asks that those should be put on their portal is for them to review. And part of that review to say this entry is wrong. From our record, it's Mr. Honorable who ought to be there. And INEC will put that person back. And
both gentlemen, talking about Dr. Sam Amadi and Chief Sam Onuigbo.
So, yeah.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I want to say thank you very much for your time here on Newsday to help us flesh out several of these key issues as we build up to the 2023 general elections.